Live. I'll do a little countdown. 3, 2, 1. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we are presented by SPI Logistics. And we got another edition of Freight Friends with Grace Sharkey ready for you today. We are just going straight live. Typically, we record these on Thursday, and then I schedule them as if they're live to go on Friday, so I can kind of interact in the comments and interact with people on YouTube and on LinkedIn. But today we're just gonna be shooting from the hip, right, straight from the hip. So with all that said, welcome in, Grace. How you doing?
Hey, doing well. Happy to be here. Who doesn't love going live at 11 o'clock in the morning? So let's go. Let's roll.
All right. Well, we got a bunch of topics to get into
Yes.
because these shows have been lasting now for close to 2 hours. So we wanted to make sure that we can hit on all of these different topics. We finally, as just sort of like a housekeeping note, we have all of these shows now uploaded to YouTube. So if you're interested, we do these episodes once a month. I go on Grace's serious show once a month, and so we do this show once a month as well. All of those are now uploaded over on YouTube. So in case you're wondering, or in case you want to watch some previous episodes, that will be a good place for you to start. And I mean, I guess with this show, it's a little bit of a challenging, I guess, entry point because there's so much going on in the world right now. I mean, obviously, Israel Palestine is a huge topic of interest that I have found myself consumed with. But for the sake of this show, we're not going to dive into the details of that. But I did want to highlight a really, really important talk that happened on X/Twitter the other night. I believe it happened on Wednesday night. It was with Reed from Lost Freight. Please advise, hat fame. He invited on Ross from Map Human Intent, Sal Mercogliano from What's Going On with Shipping, and John Conrad from G Captain on to discuss how the war between Israel and Palestine is affecting shipping routes. I mean, for a lot of folks, you may not be aware that country is located in a situation right next to the Suez Canal. A couple years ago, we all saw, any kind of disruption that happened in the Suez Canal where even a ship just gets, stuck in there and it causes chaos throughout all of the entire supply chain. So, Grace, I know you tuned into this show, and we're not going to go, too deep into it. We're going to link to it in the comments on where you can listen to it, but highly, highly recommend everyone going to listen to that discussion because it really was just it shines a light on how I think connected our global supply chain is just from the source perspective. Grace, any thoughts just quickly on that recording? I know you were a part of it too.
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing to really understand, and they'll dive into details of it when you listen to it, but we're much more connected economy wise than people, I think, assume. And when we look at, I mean, even to just even push the war aside, like weather in particular, right? How it affects different areas of the country. Like right now, we're seeing huge increases in anything that has to deal with sugar, chocolate, cocoa fields in particular, and sugar fields have dealt with some massive drought and a lot of speak of the war, fertilizer shortage issues as well, which can stem back to the Russian-Ukraine war itself. So it's really interesting if you want to learn more about historically, I think global trade in particular. Sal's like incredibly good at talking about that, and especially in this chat. But really to kind of listen and hear how so many aspects of our supply chains are connected to just these geopolitical decisions that happen is huge. And it's I think, I'm a tech writer. It fascinates me, and I think I'm more excited to see how technology can start to really showcase these areas that could potentially see problems within your supply chain, right? When these situations happen. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that. And when we talk about resilient supply chains, that's the kind of stuff that we need to really invest in order to avoid the repercussions of some of these wars. And I truly think we're going to see a lot of unrest in that area for quite some time. And I think that's another takeaway too that I caught is like, this isn't going to end tomorrow, just like the Russian Ukraine situation as well. So It's unfortunate. I know there's a lot of opinions on it and everything like that, and how, we of course should be a part of it as a nation, but just in general, really watch, the supply chains, and as an end consumer, where you see things starting to spike or shortages starting to happen, and it's likely linked to some of these factors.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially when it comes to it's not just geopolitical issues, but it's weather issues, like you said. I did an interview with E2 Open recently that talked about how their software really helps to identify those problem areas so you can better prepare your shipments for. And there was an example. And I'll link to that episode in the show notes just in case people want to check that out because we talked about the global rice supply chain
Yeah.
and how a ban on exporting of a certain kind of rice from India has people in North America really stocking up on a specific kind of rice in order to feed their families. And so that situation is one sort of caveat. And then there was another caveat from that discussion on Wednesday that was super interesting that you just don't think about. But Ross from Map Human Intent, he mentioned that our entire agriculture, livestock is cows, chickens, things like that. The way that it's set up is that these animals are reliant on a specific set of vitamins and supplements, and all of those supplements, that overwhelm over 90% of those supplements all come from China. And so if you don't have that particular supplement to feed the livestock in the United States, then our livestock conditions could collapse in a matter of weeks. And so it really just sort of highlights how, even though you think that this situation, this war is going on, across the world, it still affects you from, just sitting in your own home and the things you have to deal with. I mean, obviously, not just livestock, but any kind of situation with Taiwan and semiconductor chips. We wouldn't be able to use our iPhones. We wouldn't be able to, buy a new computer or,
Mhm.
a lot of this stuff that I'm even saying out loud even just sounds arbitrary to, or it sounds meaningless to think about considering what's going on in the rest of the world. But it's just a further point of like how connected our global supply chain is and how these things have ripple effects throughout the entire global economy. And so if you want to hear just sort of a masterclass on geopolitical issues and how that affects shipping and trade lanes and trade routes all throughout the world, go listen to that conversation. We'll link to it in the comments just in case anybody wants to take a look. But it brought me back to our discussion that we had last time when we were talking about the container that had fallen overboard with all the rubber duckies that
Yeah.
the trade routes and how it helped us discover new ocean currents all across the world. I thought, like, how are we teaching kids about shipping and just sort of the global economy just as a whole? And you had sent out a great book, sort of kind of pioneering like a freight book club among the community, and it was called Moby Duck, and that was just one of the books. Have you gotten a chance to like see more about it or read more about that book?
I read a number of pieces from it because I actually ended up using the book as a part of the radio episode. I think that week I posted it too, and it just was. What's fascinating about it is just the 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 fact that a lot of what we learn from that situation and those ducks being released actually teaches a lot about overall like ocean movements and currents, etc., right? And it's like I find that fascinating, right? The fact that we really can't learn or the that someone in a different industry, right, is like taking a problem in our industry and using it to learn more about just our planet in particular and how all of our oceans move, and at the end of the day how different currents move. And I just thought that was fascinating. It's like over here there's imagine in that situation there's like a Target or like some type of retailer who's just like panicking because this container's gone and lost at sea, right? But we're over here learning more about just our planet in general from the book itself. So yeah, I think that's there's other different. He's written a couple of other books too that looked pretty interesting. So he definitely checked that one out because I think it's just for someone, people who are into supply chains, us logistics girlies, right?
Mhm.
This will teach you a little bit more about just how other industries and I mean, science in particular, can learn from the mistakes of what we're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one really good book recommendation. One that we mentioned
Mm.
too was the Ducky book, which is more, for kids. And if you're watching on screen right now, you can kind of see a photo of my niece reading it. This book is meant for kids, but not toddlers. The pages are a little too weak for a toddler because I'm sure that this book is ripped to shreds now. So if you want to get your kids interested and freight and kind of teach them about it, you got to kind of get a book that is meant for kids. This book is meant for kids, but the paper was not meant for kids. So that was one option that I wanted to show. And then there was another option if
I
the
do
screen
have
will let me.
I have another kids book too that if you Google 10 for good buggy, Buggy, there is a there's two books to the series, and oh, this is a good one too. Peterson, called The Adventures of Trip Wheeler, and it's a story about just a kid or Trip, who he's not really a kid, he's, I'd say, like a young adult, who decides he wants to be a truck driver. And it's very fascinating because it's written by Debbie Sparks, who used to be the vice president of Women in Trucking. Now she is the executive director of the NMFTA, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But like the first book is about delivering ice cream to the red, white, and blue party down there. That's the first one. He's like delivering ice cream in DC, and his like reefer breaks down, and there's like a dispatcher character. There's like an angry owner operator character. It's like very, very true to like this industry. I think if you read it, you'd be like, oh my goodness, like this is hilarious. So go check those out too. They are just wrapping the illustrations to the third book. She
Oh,
told me
that's
that last
cool.
night. So we should have see copies. I've been promised 25 copies in December. So maybe I'll do like a on Twitter or something, like a giveaway. But they're really,
Yeah.
if you have young kids and you're in the industry, especially if you're a driver, and they're like, "What do you do for a living?" This is the perfect book to read them.
Yeah, I love it. I never really thought about, how many books are out there and how we're teaching kids about freight until Ryan Peterson wrote that book.
Yeah.
After the Suez Canal, the Evergrande got stuck in the Suez Canal, and there was that infamous picture of like the little digger that was right next to this giant
So
cargo
funny.
ship, and it was just such a cute little. It was such a I guess a realistic look at how massive these cargo ships are and how much, just and this is if you're looking at the screen right now, we've been showing previews of these different books, but it's the big ship and the little digger. That's from the CEO of Flexport, Ryan Peterson, who is
That could be a whole
kind of
nother
just
episode.
yeah, we'll just kind of skip over that, just gloss over it real quick.
Yeah, just
Because that's a whole I'm still a fan of like all of their marketing with Flexport and just Ryan Peterson in general, but that's a whole other set of can of worms that we're not going to get into on this show. So with that said, I think that is I'll link to all of these books in the show notes, so that way if people are interested, they can go get these books and be able to teach kids about the importance of supply chain and how all of these issues and all of these things are interconnected. But that really, oh, and I guess for adults too, I should probably bring up the fact of this book called The Box. And The Box is
Ah,
incredible. And that's a book about, it's from Mark Levinson, and it's how the shipping container made the world smaller and the world economy bigger. And essentially, containerization is a concept of taking the products and standardizing it so that you can ship them from one place to another, and it can also be as streamlined as possible. So the box is another like very, very great book if you're interested in reading more about shipping and sort of the history of shipping and just gaining a larger perspective on the industry that we work in. So with all that said, let's move into a couple of different topics that we wanted to get into today, because Typically we pick like one or two big stories and we dive into those, but we've had so much going on in the last few weeks that I thought it would be fun to sort of just jump into a bunch of different topics. So we're going to talk conference survival tips. We're going to talk, we just recently went to Epcot together, also CSCMP together, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about our favorite ideas and hustles in freight, some cargo crimes, and then, of course, the favorite logistics of story for the month. So, first up, conference survival tips. We both just went to CSCMP. You can probably hear it in my voice. Decided that I was going to do Epcot and then a conference and then a bachelorette party all in 1 week. I'm pushing 40, and so I'm sick.
Oh.
And I've been trying to recover, 4 days since getting home from all of that. So if you hear a little, I guess, difference in my voice, that is why. We are struggling here on our third cup of coffee at 11 a.m. in the morning. So, with all that said, CSCMP, initial thoughts, takeaways. What did you think of it? It was the first time for you at this conference, right?
Yeah, it was the first time for me. I will start with maybe the negatives of it, where I think they could improve. And it's funny because I was talking to some of the event planners, but people are part of the CSCMP about this. Uh, what I loved is there was a lot of different panels and a lot of sessions that you could attend, with really great topics, and really great speakers. To be honest with you, I was very surprised at the number of executives that ended up showing up, like
Hmm.
CEOs and of that nature. Um, but the unfortunate part is that they like sh- put all of them within like only a certain time frame, right?
Yeah,
So
it was like
like
11 and 2 was all the
yeah,
talks,
all of the talks,
or most of them.
and so that was like frustrating because you really had to choose. And I was talking to someone about like what would be great is if they could label them like, this is, if you're part of the automotive supply chain, this is the one you want. So like maybe giving a little bit more description of what they're going to talk about, and a little bit more focus of where
Hmm.
people should go if that's the nature that they're going to continue to go, or that's the schedule that they're going to continue to go with. So that's the only like complaint I guess I would have about it. Besides that, like incredible panels, incredible guests that were a part of it. I did two panels myself. They both went extremely well. The one I was maybe most nervous about how well it would go, I thought went the best. So that
Hmm.
was a lot of fun. And I think for this one, it's definitely like a different group of individuals that I haven't been able to really speak with. Like
Hmm.
a couple of carriers, like large carriers, were represented there, but it was nice. There's a lot of I'd say like industry associations there that I got to speak one on one with, and meet directly. So it was definitely a different audience. I think dependent on what you, of course, want out of certain types of conferences, this one was probably a good one for if you wanted to like meet people face to face. I mean, uh, and honestly, a lot of, like I said, surprised by how many like decision makers. That's probably the best way to explain it. Just true decision makers that were there, and especially when it comes to like the shippers in particular, ranging from like what even someone like UPS or USPS to I mean Pepsi, right? And some of these big brands were represented there. So yeah, it was definitely interesting, and I think that's the only thing. I wish they would change it to like maybe a couple of panels per hour so that you could go and see more. Um, but overall, for the first time, I definitely enjoyed it and left there with some knowledge as well.
Yeah, I think this one has been on my radar because their CSCMP is very much so they have like local chapters all
Yeah,
over the country. And I know there's one here in Jacksonville. And I just for, I started up my business and podcast during COVID. So I just haven't done much networking at the local level. And so with this conference being in Orlando, it's a very short drive for me to make, and they gave me a speaking opportunity to
yeah,
be along a stage with like Nicole Glenn and Charlie Safro and Christy Knitchell, Sharon Starr and Liz Wayne. Like that group of women is just a rock star lineup that I couldn't say no to. And so
yeah,
trying to kind of go to more conferences, not I've gone to so many damn FreightWaves conferences that I feel like I'm seeing, some of the same people there. So I really wanted to make a conscious effort to try out these different conferences to kind of spread my wings a little bit and see if I could meet different people. And this conference definitely accomplished that, where I could see some of the same people that go to FreightWaves conferences, of course, because, there obviously a lot of leaders and executives go there too. But for this one, it was a lot of new people. And like you said, it was a lot of people that I think work in supply chain at these greater like shipping companies. And so
Yes.
it's almost like, we're kind of like in our little like freight logistics bubble. But then you think about the overall supply chain, and there's so many more people that work in the overall supply chain. So
Yes.
CSCMP, Council for Supply Chain Management Professionals. I think I got that acronym right. But yeah, it was they had a giant expo floor with a lot of companies demoing. They had a puppy lounge, of course,
Yes.
which is my favorite new conference trend. It really is such a great way to decompress from talking to so many people. And then you just go hang out with some puppies for a minute, and then you're good and you're refreshed and you can go have more conversations. I also think too that the positioning of your booth is so important
Yeah.
at these events where, I don't sorry, but I don't remember the sponsor of the puppy lounge, but I remember the booths that were around the
Yes.
puppy lounge. And so being able to pick like your primo position of like foot traffic, especially on an expo floor like that, I thought was really interesting. And then also just, the networking opportunities. And that to me is my favorite part of it. All of the talks that I went to were fantastic. One of yours in particular was the one on like AI and like
Yeah.
customs and border trade. And I've said on on the series, lots of times, I am such an obsessed fan of To Catch a Smuggler. That's a show that comes
Yes.
on National Geographic. So I'm obsessed with like customs and border policies and like, just the flow of goods through country to country. And you had a woman on your panel, Janet. I'm blanking on her last name, but she was like 70 years old,
Yeah.
talking about like adopting AI, talking about trade compliance. She stole the show. Like
Yeah.
she was so brilliant during that talk. Do you have a little bit, I guess, maybe background or insight on her?
Yes, so she, Janet Labuda, and for everyone out there, actually, my latest article on FreightWaves is about this panel, so you can get some of the stories off of that from that Blythe's talking about. She works as a consultant for customs policy for Maersk, and she had spent most of her career, I think 25 years of it, working for the Customs Border Protection. So she the best way to explain it is like, I think some people hear customs, border, CBP, and they just think, oh, the people like checking us out when we cross the border. She made it like I think they deserve a TV show. I mean, she like made it very like NCIS where it was like, wow, like you've seen some things in your life, And one of my favorite stories, and I talk about this in an article, is she talks about, I don't know, you might have came in right after Operation Mirage,
Mm.
where they took, this was when she was working textiles for CBP, and they took like 150 of the top textile importers, and they wanted to prove that they were who they said they were, like see um how legit some of these importers were. So they went to China, they went and visited all of the physical addresses on the paperwork for these imports, and only 55% of those 150, I believe, importers were legit. The other half were like just like a woman in a house, and then they're like, how does this work? Like, how are you doing all this paperwork? And she's like, I don't do any of it. I provide them my address. I get a penny per transaction. And this woman had made like $10,000 a month
Wow.
from like allowing the Chinese government to like use her location, or the Chinese importer to use the location for fraud. So it's that is like, and that's just like choosing 150. Like imagine all of the importers that they see on a daily basis, right? And here's the problem, and she brought I actually brought it up because I knew she knew what I was talking about, but a couple of years ago, right I think 2018, e-commerce started to be a big deal, and the CBP was like, "We need to address this." So you can Google it. I actually have a link to it in the article. They came up with a plan to start figuring out how to get their control of all these imports and all these e-commerce. I mean, all these small packages, right? Like, we can't open up every single one. That there's no way. There's no way to prove that a lot of this is right. So there's a number of tech companies. Altana Technologies is one. Boxy is another one that I've talked to in the past that works with Customs Border and the Department of Defense as well to help them figure out, okay, if this is the limited number of resources we have to watch for fraud, watch for drugs, watch for it's, even
Like
like,
counterfeit
let's,
goods
yeah,
and
counterfeit goods, right? Then this is who you should target, or these boxes is what you should be looking at, and helps them at least pinpoint where to start. And it's just kind of funny to, like, you don't really think about it, but all of the packages that are coming in, right? Like, they don't check every single one of them. They don't even check. They don't even have time to check all the trucks that come through the border. So it's there's one I talk about in the article, but like there's one time they caught like 5 pound they over 5 pounds of fentanyl, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but a drop of fentanyl will like kill you. It's 2 milligrams, I think, is a lethal dose. So
wow,
that comes out to potentially, I mean, killing close to 500,000 people.
wow.
So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And like I said, she really, like, she's fascinating. She started writing a book like on the plane to the event. Like, she was reading us like her first like paragraph. And so I can't wait for this book to come out because I think it's gonna be full of stories, that's for sure.
And I think she had a mind-blowing stat of, like, something like 30% of e-commerce shipments that are coming from China to the West Coast are all from the company Temu.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Temu, like the gamified, like, shopping e-commerce app, it's kinda adjacent to, Shein, kind of not really, maybe, a lot of the same
Like
technology.
Shein, but everything,
Yeah,
like
and
it's almost like
everything.
Groupon. It's like Groupon, right? Where it's like, what's not on this site? Like,
Right. And it's one of those it's one of those experiences that I've never felt like I was duped, like online shopping,
yeah.
but Temu duped me. Like
Yeah.
I did the thing they had, that Super Bowl commercial, and I was like, "Oh, let me try it out. Let me download the app." And I downloaded the app and I started up a cart of just some, obviously some knockoff things that looked interesting, like the Dyson hair dryer that has like the five
Yeah.
tools in one. Like I got that thing. I got, a bunch of other things, and it's crap. It's crap products. You really have to like look for the good products and really just be willing to roll the dice on it. But
Yeah.
anyways, I started up a cart of the things that I wanted. And then you do what you do. You leave the app and you don't buy anything yet. So I went to social media and I was browsing on there, and I got an ad on Instagram for a few products that looked interesting from Temu. And so I click on the ad. It opens up the app. What happened is that it opened up a separate cart from the one I already had. So I thought
Oh,
that I was adding things to my current cart. And when I saw the total price, I was like, oh my gosh, like that includes everything. That includes everything that I had just already added and the new stuff that was targeted to me in a social media post. And I clicked order, purchase, and then I go back and find out that they just created a separate cart for me altogether. So I thought that that was a little bit shady, and I didn't
yeah.
like that because it was
No.
definitely like misleading. Have you bought anything from them?
I've been on the app, and but that's kind of like my thing is like, I'm like, God, I know this is just gonna be like destroyed once I get this. So no, unfortunately, I haven't followed through with a purchase for it yet, but I've gotten awfully close. And I will say I love watching Temu unboxings. Like, that's my, they do those on Instagram as well. But it's
Don't
No,
buy the
not
Dyson dupe. It is
yes.
not good. It's
No.
not good. It's
Yeah.
already getting returned. And you know how much of a hassle some of these companies are with their returns. Anyways, so that was a really good
Yes.
stat from Janet, and her talk was incredible. I hope you have her on the show soon because she
Yes.
was just filled with like a wealth of knowledge. And what was so refreshing is that she's like, I'm a 70-year-old woman, and I think that AI is like the next big thing. Like she's already using it and her processes, and I was like, oh, thank God, we don't have some kind of doomer speech on AI and it helping her do her job more efficiently. And the other two women on the panel were fantastic too. But Janet just sort of stood out to me as panel wise from all the panels that I saw. She was the most entertaining. So kudos to you on moderating that panel. So what about I guess CSCMP, is that the first conference for you in the sort of the fall slate? Do you have any more planned that you're going to? Obviously F3.
Yes, yeah, so definitely F3. And so if you get, well, I'm going next week to TIA Technovation. So I'm on a panel on AI, go figure. And my articles all this week have been AI too. So life is fun. I'm excited because actually it's going to be myself, Don Everhart from Freight Fauna, Ryan Schreiber from Metaphora, and I believe someone from Arrive Logistics.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, it's I mean, 3 or 2 out of the 3 people are people that I talk about this stuff with all the time. So I'm excited to see how candid maybe we get in the chat. Um, at what
With
level?
with Ryan on the panel, you are
Yeah.
absolutely getting candid in
I
a good
my
way.
my goal is to outshine him. So it's just gonna be it could get really crazy. But there's also a Shark Tank like event there. So
Oh yeah,
there's
yeah.
Ben Gordon, I know, is a part of it, a number of like
Josh
investors and
Lyles, he has
yes. Oh, love
the
Josh.
CRM platform. I just had
Yes.
him on the podcast. He was great. So he's participating in that.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I think there's 3 total businesses that are participating in sort of a Shark Tank environment there, which sounds super cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. So that's in San Diego. So if you're gonna be there, like find me. I'll definitely be there too for the whole event. And then yeah, F3. There's a couple other ones potentially I might go to.
Like women in trucking, I think is one that's
Women,
kind of on the radar.
that one is like the 2 days before F3. So it's
Oh, that's tough.
yeah, it's that one I don't think I'm gonna make this year, but definitely go to that. I've been to that the last 2 years, and it is really good. Um, so the one that it's not really a conference, but the one I'm possibly trying to get to, a Reese Across America, is coming up in December.
Hmm.
Debbie Sparks, actually, I have another one I can talk about too. She heads the Reese Across America, and for anyone who doesn't know what it is, uh, it takes a lot of trucks, so it's a big trucking participating uh nonprofit, but they work with local communities to make sure that each veteran has a wreath on their grave during the holiday season. But what we do in December is we head out to Arlington and we lay
Hmm.
wreaths on every single one of their graves as well. But there's like 40 or 50 trucks that literally are hauling wreaths
Wow.
from the place I want to say in Massachusetts, maybe it's Connecticut, all the way down to DC. And Debbie puts on this wonder. It's a really great event if you want to learn more about the veterans that are a part of our industry.
Hmm.
There I had a couple of really tearful moments the last time that I went because I don't think we give them as much support as we should in this industry. And it's a perfect job for many people coming from war to transition to as well. And there's a lot of really great people in the space. So if you've never been to one of their events, I would highly suggest trying to get to that in DC as well. The another event that I think is really interesting, and I'm trying to think if I should hold off on it. Well, I will talk. I can talk about it again later. But uh, cybersecurity wise,
Hmm.
the NMFTA is having a cybersecurity conference in Houston on October 22nd to the 25th. I want to say. I have heard that they're gonna like live on site cyber hack into a truck and like stop
Oh,
it while
wow.
it's on the road to like show you like how simple it can be. Yeah. But I just had Debbie on the radio show last night and she was talking about we're talking about Estes, and that's kind of we'll dive into that a little bit later. But I think this is going to be a big issue that people are not prepared for. I mean, we laugh, right? It's even here at Freightways, like every once in a while we'll get like we laugh about it because everyone will get them on the same day, but like, hey, it's Craig texting you. Can you send me some gift cards? And it's like, no. So it's like we all get these like phishing emails and scams, and I think that's like the laughable, funny part of it. But our industry is a perfect target. You want to destroy an economy, stop all the trucks on the road, and I think people don't understand how easily that could happen.
Mhm.
I mean, shutting down someone like Estes isn't that hard to do. So, if you're interested, or even if you're in the IT department of anything related to supply chain, head to this one. It's free. You just have
Oh,
to get
wow.
there. Yeah. And so there's scholarships that they're working on giving out too. So to teach people more about this stuff. But yeah, go check that one out on their website as well.
Yeah, talk about a career that's going to be in high demand, not just now, but in the near future. It's one
Yeah.
of those just fascinating topics, and to your point, we're going to dive into more of that with the SD situation a
Yeah.
little bit later on in the show. But what about I guess the your survival tips for surviving
Yes.
all of these different conferences? What do you do like pre, during, like post conference in order to just make sure that you get your money's worth of go and your time's worth of going to these events, but then also so that you can still keep up with your work that you're still responsible for, even though you're having fun at, and it looks like we are having fun at a lot of these different events. What is sort of your go-to strategy to prep for a conference?
Well, here's the first thing I'm gonna say too with F3 coming up. My favorite thing about F3 is that we get so many wonderful tech companies, and a lot of times they use their time on stage to introduce a new piece of tech that they have going on. And then their favorite thing to do as soon as they get off the stage is give me the press release. And I wish to God I had enough time to get. So this is like kind of my warning shot out that everyone who is going to F3 who plans on unveiling some type of new technology, I would love to cover it. So get with me today as soon as possible, and let's get the embargoes and all that stuff going. Get me the information. Let me do some that's like the next couple weeks for me is literally a lot of this prep work. There's
Mm.
already two things I'm working on for announcements at F3. Like, get that to me now so we're ready to go. And the same thing happened at CSCMP as well. And shout out to the scheduling consortium. Like, they were on it. They had, of course, a release of their standards the morning of. And I got invited to it, and I said, hey, I'm going to be, well, I was doing their panel like exactly immediately afterwards. Sorry, hiccups. So I was like, listen, that's like, as a journalist, I try to get in touch with people prior so I can have an idea of like what needs to be done and what needs to be scheduled early up on the site so that we're breaking the news still, but also I can enjoy watching them present and learn more about it. So anyone watching who's like, oh, I have something, shoot me emails now, get that rolling. So I like to go into it figuring out what I'm going to have to write, where I need to be. And I will say this, I really did enjoy about CSCMP is I always like try to find a safe place to work. And when I
Hmm.
say safe, I don't mean like I'm going to get attacked. I mean, like somewhere that's quiet that I know I can kind of hide away, because the fun part about these events is that, especially in the first like couple hours, and I'm Blythe, I know we lose each other quickly because of it. Like, people want to say hi and introduce themselves. And like, I remember prepping for one of the panels to like, I just needed to write like 4 questions on a card, on like a notebook card, and it took like 2.5 hours. And that's the thing, is I want to take this time to see people, and I want to be able to go away for 20 minutes, get some real work done for 20 minutes, and then come back and talk enjoys our industry as and what they're doing. So whenever I try to find like, okay, where's the press room? Where's do you have a meeting room? Do you have a space that people can go to work? And CSCMP had just so many tables and areas that you
Mm.
could sit down and actually get work done and have like meetings and stuff. So that's a big one. That's actually really hard to find at a lot of conferences
Huh.
as well. So positive to them. I loved the fact and there's cords outlets everywhere. So that was helpful, and I'm sure guests there trying to work as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I heard like booking loads throughout the thing, right? Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So that's a big one for me. I always like to arrive early on the first day too. Like, I don't know if Blythe completely agrees with me on that one. I'm gonna get lost. I want to know where everything is, and there's times where like in conferences, right, things are in different halls or in different parts of the venue. So I like to just get in early, figure out where everything is, and then get work done if I need to, and then enjoy it as a whole. So those are my big tips. Oh, and also bring a water bottle because
Or you could
water
just
is
get one
just
on the expo floor
yeah,
because
or
my
yeah,
god.
but get water, get ice. Ice like, is a big one, right? I'm a huge like I need cold. So like every time I leave for a conference, I stop by the ice machine. I fill up my water bottle full of it, and I keep it moving. But keep yourself hydrated. I would say wear comfortable shoes, but that is
Yes.
just one I don't live by. So and everyone makes fun of me. But listen, I'm a 5'3" short queen, and I can't. And I have better posture when I have a heel. So usually I just go into it like my life's gonna be a nightmare on 2 days from now. Day one, I'll wear a heel. Day two, I will not because I completely regret it. So I would tell you wear a comfortable shoe, but I've never
Sneakers.
done it, and I never will.
Oh, well, I see, I am so ever since COVID, I got rid of all of my heels. I was like, "This is just a different era of my life now." And so I donated all of my heels, and now I'm just a sneakers girly. And so sneakers or boots, that is my go-to, or, I'm a flirty, and so sandals and flip-flops as well, as long as they
Love
have
that.
good arch support. But one thing that is surprising is like when we're talking about shoes, Crocs makes incredible, not just like their typical Crocs that everybody has, but they make really, really good like wedges and
You're
heels
right.
and sandals as well. So don't sleep on Crocs because those shoes I have walked miles in, and those are, I guess, would technically be qualified as heels too. So between Crocs or sneakers, that's like my go-to. And I have like Crocs now. I have them in black, and I also have them in brown, so they can pair with different outfits. So that's my number one. To and bring a backpack.
Yes.
Backpacks have saved my life. And I started getting business cards again. So I started bringing business cards, and I put my picture on the business card because I figured
Smart.
I have such a problem like remembering who I talked to and when. So if I can visualize that, I'm much better with faces than names. So I thought, well, maybe other people are like me. So I put like all my general contact information on a business card just so I can quickly hand it to someone with my photo on it so they kind of remember if we had a conversation. um but then also the backpack is huge because I can just throw everything
Yes.
in there. And with this particular conference, I waited too long to book a hotel, so I didn't stay on site, and I hate not staying on site of the conference.
Yeah.
So you need like a backpack with like survival gear that you
Yes.
can be able to manage because you're going from like 8 a.m. to a lot of times 8 p.m., even later than that at times, without going back to your room. So just keep that in mind as you're planning out these days. Is like that has the backpack has saved my life. And then also the notes app. The notes app on my phone is undefeated. Like I
Yeah.
go through and I check out the sponsor page on the event because I want to see like what companies are there and what companies are spending money. Because if they're spending money there, then maybe they'll spend money on a podcast. Maybe they'll sponsor a podcast, or sponsor, someone within the logistics industry. So I check that out, what companies would make sense to meet with and just introduce myself. And then I also keep a list of like daily things that I have to do. And it's all in one just sort of in the
Smart.
Notes app. It's all in one thing. And then at the very bottom of the Notes app, I just have it as a place to just take notes on things that I've learned. And so that was where I got like the Timu stat from Janet's talk, your panel. There was also some other stats that I took while we were walking around Epcot. And then some of, like the swag, of course. Like I think you can't go to a conference and not talk about the swag that people offer. But I'm very like, I've gotten so much better about not taking everything. I
Yes.
used to take everything. My first conference after COVID, like first big conference after COVID was Manifest. That I think it was at 2021, their
Yeah.
their first event. I literally took so much swag that I had to ship a box separately back to my house. It cost
The
over $100 to ship this box, but there was no way it was fitting in my luggage, and I
so
didn't want to
good.
give up on it. And so
Yeah,
half of that stuff, half
Manifest
of
has
that
good swag. Like, the people show up for the swag there, so, that one makes sense.
And there's so many now that I'm so much better at, like, realizing, like, what I have too much of, I have too many damn water bottles. Like, Arc Best, I love you, but please stop making me take your water bottles. They're so good and they're new each time that it just forces me to take a new one. And now I have 5 Arc Best water bottles in my house that I'm never gonna use all of 5 of these, but I can't get rid of them because 'cause they're so nice.
It's so good. They're so good. Well, it's like, I think we were at Manifest last year, right? In the women's, talk section, it was like that whole room full of the best DHL. Yes, there it is. Yes, the yellow bottle.
Sorry, DHL, I put my sticker over it.
But shout out DHL because those are like, and I took, they're just, people are just leaving them on the table. I took 3 of them, like, because they're the best water bottle. And so yeah, no, I to be honest with you, I don't think I took, except for like everything Michigan State had, I didn't take that much swag this time around. I was good on that. But for me, I just get very precise on it. Like, I'll go around and say, I need that. How do I? And it kind of sucks as honestly a journalist though, because uh you know, yeah, oh yes.
The Pallet Trader coaster.
I've got,
That was a must take. So
yes.
I took a couple of these, which was great, and so now I have my little, droid sitting on top of the coaster. So shout out to Pallet Trader for making some swag that I wanted to take, and now sits in the back. My little Lola droid,
Oh my
sits
god.
on top of it. But that was really good swag. There was another, Timothy, Pajek. I'm probably not pronouncing your last name correctly, so apologies in advance for that. But he gave me a really cool CSCMP pin. Y'all know I love my pins.
Oh
Not a writing pin, a clip-on pin, like pin trading. If you
yes.
listen to the podcast, if you listen to the show, tell me you do, and I'll give you a pin. Like, that's my rule. Like, if someone tells me they like the podcast, I immediately hand them a pin at conferences. They're so easy to take, to bring with you, and they're so easy for people to take with them home. I'm a pin fanatic. There you go. She's showing the Everything is Logistics pin right there on the lanyard.
Oh,
So
oh,
yeah.
oh, oh, oh,
Oh, there's
also,
another one, a Digital Dispatch one. Okay.
this is from
Um,
Nest. Yeah.
so yeah, pins I am such a huge proponent of because they're collectible. They're not one of these things that like a notebook or a koozie or something like that people are just going to probably toss in the donation pile as soon as they get home. T-shirts are another one. I'm sorry, I very very selective with the t-shirts that I will take. It's Convoy, I think, is the only t-shirts that I have taken and like kept and worn regularly. I just know that I'm not going to wear them. I'm not going to use them. So if someone gives me a t-shirt, like I'll be appreciative, of course, but it's likely going in the donation pile. So that is one thing that's like, don't waste your money on a lot of these promo items that are difficult for people to take back home, that people probably have a lot of, unless somebody is just legitimately a really big fan of your brand. It's probably going to be a waste, unless it's really really good merch. I say skip it. Otherwise, I just don't know the shelf life of a lot of these products. But like I think these are no brainers, like the palette post-it notes,
Yes.
like because it sits in front of you. So shout out to Roadrunner. It sits in front of you. You see the logo all the time. You become familiar with the brand. Ask yourself before you buy conference swag, what's something that people are going to want to get and are going to be proud to keep. I think that that's very important with conference swag. Do you have like favorite conference swag that you've gotten? I guess maybe the water bottles are probably the top one for you.
Uh, they are, but I'm also like you where basically if I bring one home, I have to throw one away. Like, yeah, well, like I'm again short queen stuff. I can only reach so high in my cupboards, and it's like so now there's like they're on the top cover, they're just getting dusty. I really like, and I think this goes back to like the jobs and depending on who you're like getting the swag to. Love pens. I because I just lose so many pens,
Writing
but like
pens?
but like good pens. Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Like I think
The
this one's
good
from
click.
yeah, this one's from Convoy. I oh yeah.
Palette Trader, shout
This
out to them too.
this
They had a
isn't from
really
Convoy, but like who doesn't love this? That's from Office Max. Uh oh yeah, well it's actually to showcase I did get one of these, from Convoy, little Hall stars,
Oh, that's
game card,
cute.
right? But, no, I like really good pens. Like, who are we talking?
Mhm.
Oh, Palatrator, yes,
Yep.
right?
They had a
And
good click on their pen.
good click, solid pen, and just because I lose them so much that
Mm.
it's like, I got this cat, and she just like if I drop a pen on the ground, consider it under a couch somewhere. So any of that stuff, I do like. Also, and it's funny because this is kind of from the industry, um, like these like coffee cups more. Like, give me a coffee cup instead of a huge like big Yeti. But like, this is actually from Stone Loads, which is a company that teamed with LoadSmart to give dynamic pricing to uh their consumers or their customers. But yeah, like just I don't know. I like weird stuff too.
Hmm.
I think at conferences, though, to be honest with you, like if you're gonna spend your money on something that people like remember, do like what Triumph Pay did, right? Triumph Pay was the one that had the like margaritas and stuff, right?
Yeah, so
Like,
that was one that you had to go to their booth in order to get. So
yeah,
that's a good one. Like, what's going to bring people to your booth that makes them want to go?
yeah.
Pamphlets like sitting out on the table, that's fine. But I literally have like it just sits on my desk. I have this entire stack of pamphlets that I still have to go through just to figure out, what's going to make for a good story in the future.
Mhm.
Or I guess from like a general audience member that's just no, that's not media related that's going to show up to these things. What kind of interactive elements are you going to have at your booth that are going
Yes.
to make people stop by? Yard management systems was another one that I stopped by because I don't know. It was they had these giant TVs, touch screen displays, and you could literally move the different trucks around to different spots depending on, availability, like
That's
unloading
awesome.
capabilities. And that was really cool for someone like me who has, I'm sort of like planning obsessed and I love like project management and things like that. Like being able to look at something like that to be able to manage your fleet and warehousing operations, I thought was really, really cool to just be able to visualize it and be able to play around with the system. So that was really cool experience. So whether it's like tech or alcohol or swag, like think of some creative ways to get people to come to your booths. Another
Mhm.
part that I had briefly mentioned just now was that we did the mistake of going to a Disney park and walking, 20,000 steps before you wear yourself out at a conference.
Yeah.
So we got a chance to go to Epcot, and it was the first time you had been to Epcot or really just Disney in general in quite some time. So what were your
Yeah.
your thoughts of the park experience besides the rain? It did rain all day, but besides the rain, what was your thoughts?
Uh, Loved it. I mean, it's yeah, I haven't been to honestly like a theme park. Like even or we're talking about like roller coasters, like I haven't been to a roller coaster park since like 2000, and so I've been like 14 or 15, like
Oh, wow.
2005. We have like a kind of a park here in Michigan called Michigan's Adventure, but it's not worth really bringing up. But like going to something, I haven't been to Epcot since I was like 14, so 2004ish, and I loved it. I mean, that's the happiest place on earth, and to talk about. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, if you're
listen,
watching on the screen right now, I'm showing this demonstration. This was the first place we went to was
yeah.
France, which for folks who don't know, Epcot is they have the World Showcase area. They have the giant ball, which most people are familiar with. The new Guardians of the Galaxy coaster. But in World Showcase, they have 9 different countries. And they are able to, the people who work in those countries have to be on a work visa from that country. So, all of the food and the drinks are from that specific country. And so they talk about, the concept of like drinking around the world at Epcot. And that's what we attempted successfully, I might add. But we started the day with a champagne flight from France. And
The answer is we each got our own 3 glasses of champagne at 9 o'clock in the morning. So there's 6 glasses of champagne right there. That's why I'm so excited.
and then we immediately bring it out to a trash can right
Yeah.
outside and have drinks on top of a trash can, which is just sort of Epcot tradition at this point. You're eating and drinking on top of trash cans, but that's just what you got to do in the happiest place on earth when you're trying to multitask and get a lot of things done. So great trip overall. Is also
Oh,
included wine
yeah.
festival. So they have, in addition to the 9 countries, they have like adjacent countries that they also add, different booths. And so you can try different flavors from all around the world. Just, really like a fantastic time. And then the queen, of course, herself, Belle, one of the best Disney princesses of all time. We got the chance to see her.
To look
Fantastic.
at her, only to look at her, because here's the thing, when you're an adult, Disney likes to treat you like you're not a child, and when you wanna get in line to go see Belle because she's your favorite, I mean, look at the queen herself, just so happy and so read up too. Miss likes to read books. Uh, they're like, "Oh, and lines cut off," and happened multiple times. We'll just say that happened multiple times. And I
Yeah.
think if we had a little child with us, it would have been a little bit different. But I guess a couple of girlies on their 5th drink of the day can't go see Belle.
Yeah, it's not exactly enticing, I think,
Bob
to the
Iger,
cast members.
shout out to Bob Iger. This is a showcase of your leadership.
No, no Bob Iger slander on this show. I have a Bob Iger stan, even now,
No,
even in this moment.
we love Bob Iger.
Yes,
That's a we
Disney
friends, we
daddy
get
over there.
Bob, yeah, we get Bob Iger on this show. That'd be
Listen,
so,
I would cry and
I'd
I'd
be like,
probably faint if I ever got Bob Iger a chance to just even have a conversation with Bob Iger. Yeah, hopefully future president. Hopefully I don't make anybody mad with that
let's
statement,
start
but
with for Florida, let's start with governor at this point. Jeez.
well, that's
God.
a whole other issue. I am Team Iger in that boat. As soon as DeSantis said something about putting a prison next to Disney, uh, yeah, it was very clear on what side I was going
It's
to
the
be on.
happiest prison on earth.
Oh my, just blasphemous. Like I get heated just thinking about it. Okay, let's
Oh
so
man.
champagne fact was the guy in France. We just showed that video. The worker who is actually from France, he said there's a bottle of Moet. Is that how you say it? The champagne Moet?
Sure. Moe.
Moet with the
We're
little,
calling there's
dashes above.
there's some investor guys right now are like, oh, look at these noobs.
So I
Mo.
had it I had in the notes app at the very bottom, says guy in France says there's a bottle of Moet opened every minute of every day. And
Yes.
then I have a little quotation marks. What are they celebrating? Grace's reaction.
Yeah. 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 That's right. What
So
are yeah.
a, a bottle opened every minute of every day of champagne.
What could
What was the stat?
what could they possibly be so happy about? It's just the
Yeah.
morning, just
Yeah.
orange juice.
Turn on the news. What are you celebrating?
Oh my god, so good.
Okay, okay. Let's get into the next segment, and that is favorite ideals, favorite ideas and hustles in freight. The idea is that we each pick one. I'm not sure if you actually picked one though.
I
Do
did.
you have one? Oh, you did. Awesome. Let's see
I
what you
but
got.
I didn't do idea. I did hustle.
Awesome.
And this this isn't at anyone, but if you think
It
it could
is.
be you, then it could be you. Uh, I mean, who's not a consultant in this industry at this point in time? So my hustle of freight this week is uh there's there's a lot of consultants out here in this space that and listen, let me just say, I just want to put this out here. Like
The
uh,
shade is
I
coming.
could I just want people to do their due diligence. I think that's what I want to get to here. Is there because people there's a lot of people that know very niche things that allow them to be consultants. It's something I would love to do one day. I still don't feel like I have the full knowledge in order to fully do that and attack that appropriately in my career at this point in time. But there's a lot of people out there in this space that I see have quit their jobs or leave places and quickly become consultants. And again, this isn't at any one person. This is actually at like a lot of just say a theme that I keep noticing out there. And I just want people should do their due diligence with these people. Like call same thing like resumes, like call the people that they've consulted, look into this stuff because I honestly say this because I had a conversation with someone in this industry, and I won't put their name out there, but there's a lot of consultants out there that I think actually really, really hurting the industry right now.
Mm,
And the way that they're like attacking the space and maybe critiquing it, there's always room for critiques. That's not my point here at all. But I just, in this day and age in social media, you see it even like and sometimes when people are like exposed like YouTubers are exposed and stuff like that, like we don't really know what everyone is doing out there on a daily basis. And so my hot take of today and this the hustle I think of the century is just like really reach out to people, see how well these services are and what they're doing and how they're contributing and the knowledge that they have behind them in order to consult because uh, one I think there's people that might be getting services that actually don't need them, that
mm,
have the same tenure and experience and thought process that maybe some of these individuals could be giving. And also this industry is just so fragmented and the problems are so unique a lot of times where I think if you're hiring a consultant who's never been a part of that, like they're not really going to be able to help you that much
mm,
than you can help your own self. It's always good to gather opinions, but I think I find it very fascinating how quickly people become consultants in this industry or um people that know their background and see them of course bringing up this capability to help out and like trust me, people have asked me before to help with things and I'll greatly push them to someone I think is maybe even better than myself. So yeah, just something to watch. Just I'm starting to notice a lot of consulting popping up, a lot of people that I've seen at conferences who quick Googles will tell you like maybe not the best person to get that opinion from.
hmm.
So just do your due diligence because I just don't
And
want
check
people.
your references.
Yeah, just check, make a phone call. Like that's what
References can save you a lot of time and money.
exactly. Yeah, and again, not talking about one individual or anything in this situation. It's like it's something I'm starting to learn about this industry, and it's fascinating to me just the amount of due diligence people don't do on individuals and yeah, treat
No,
treat consultants just like employees at the end of the
right.
day.
And I think that with this industry, we've seen, obviously a lot of like mom and pop shops, of course, But with the growth of like entrepreneurialism and, the gig economy and going out on your own, it's happening in freight too. And
Yeah.
so just being able to do your, like you said, do your due diligence, make sure that these people have the experience that they're talking about, find out what their perspective is, and check references. References can save you so much time and so much money, like especially if you make any kind of like investment decision based on their advice, and turns out maybe they're full of shit and they have no
Yeah.
idea what they're talking about. So checking references can save you a lot. Like, don't just be fooled by the glitz and glamour of someone coming in, or I think the concept of someone sort of being like a white knight and coming in and saving the day for you and providing that secret sauce of what's going to work.
Yeah.
Consultants can save you time and money too, but they can also cost you a lot as well. So
Yes.
checking references, I think, is just the easiest. And for some for whatever reason, is companies don't do it.
Yeah,
So
and, like, here's a perfect example involving myself. People have come to me asking, "I want to start a podcast. Like,
mhm,
how do I go about that?" Like, please understand, I have an extremely talented, tenured team of professionals that help me put on a
mm.
podcast, at Freightwaves. Like, we have a production team. Like, the only reason I know StreamYard exists is because I'm on it right now with Blythe, you know? And so when people ask me, I point them to Blythe, like, understand, maybe people, be know what you're good at, know what you actually can help with, and support people in the industry who know how to do it better than you. Like, that's what I kind of bring. Like, I could run with that, and sure, I'll help you, I guess. But why would I do that when I could point you to someone else who could do it better? Help, not my friend, help Blythe out, or help out someone who I support in what they're doing. And for me, it's just kind of like, I'm a big karma person,
Mhm,
and that's positive and negative, right? Like, if I
for
feel like
sure.
I'm doing something I don't feel like I truly represent, that's gonna come back at me. And if putting the positive energy and supporting the people around you who do know what they're doing, like, can work too. So yeah, just consider, like, what people are doing as well. Cause I always find that funny when people are like, what software should I use? I think it was on 3PL Live, and he was like, like, and I'm like, listen, have a I show up, I bring the content, but in terms of the cameras working, like, that's Isaiah, it's like call Isaiah, call Todd. Like, I don't know. So yeah, that's my hot take today. I had to come up
Yeah.
with something, right?
Yeah, that's a really good one, and that's the sort of the, I guess, the mantra behind this segment, is that is there an idea that you've heard in freight? Is there software that's kind of emerging on the scene? Is there a new business concept that's emerging on the scene that you should be on the lookout for? You should be on the lookout for in good and bad ways. So that's a great one, that you bring to the table. One of the ones I wanted to bring up, was and I'm sorry this, because I know you're a Coca-Cola girly,
No,
but there was at CSCMP, there was a
no.
talk given by a Pepsi executive that
Oh
talks
yeah.
about their smart packaging initiative.
No, I couldn't.
And I thought that it was really, really interesting, because since COVID, we have seen the comeback story of the QR code, and how the
Yes.
QR code is really just, revolutionizing, multiple different industries, and it's also affecting consumer goods, consumer packaged goods. So this Pepsi executive, and I'm sorry I don't have his name, but I have a couple of pictures that I took of the slides of during the presentation. But basically, Pepsi and a lot of their, sister companies are reorganizing the way that they do their labeling on all of their different packaging, from the traditional barcode to these new that not new, but the QR codes of what's going on in the industry. And so basically, with the UPC today, it has a current data standard that it has a manufacturer code, it has a product code, and a scan check digit. So every UPC that you see on a label, very traditional. So by 2027, they estimate that all of their packaging is going to move from the traditional barcode over to the QR code, and they're
Wow.
calling it the GS1 digital link. And it allows you to have all of this different information that you can attach to this specific label. And so when you think about all of the different information that you can
Love
attach to a
that.
label, so if you're looking at the photo on the screen right now, ignore that man taking a photo with his iPad. My God.
Yeah,
But
maybe ignore Starry too.
the Sprite knockoff.
No, Sierra Mist. It's just Sierra Mist.
Well, well, they're trying to compete with Sprite, and that Sprite is just they are who they are. They are them. They are him. Whatever.
They
You know.
are. No, this stuff is really cool. I came back into the room during this slide.
But it shows like all of the information that you can go from like, three little pieces of information on a traditional barcode to the QR code where it can show certifications, recycling and sustainability goals. It can show recalls. It can show regulatory discourse, nutritional labeling, multi packs. Like it shows like all of this different information that is now in the same space on a label that a barcode takes up. You can now use it with a QR perspective and show all of these different
Love that.
capabilities with using a QR code. Just a simple change on the packaging that are being done at a very sorry Grace, PTSD right there that's with the starry label on it. But it basically it's showing all of these different not just from a safety perspective, from a regulatory perspective, but also from just an interaction from the consumer standpoint. Like imagine being in the store and scanning this and seeing if this is something that you should add to your recipe list, to your diet, to your kitchen. And it's not just the items in a grocery store, but this can obviously be replicated throughout all of different packaged goods and all of just goods that we buy in general. So I thought that was a really cool initiative. And so again, they estimate that QR codes are going to replace the barcode by 2027. So if you start seeing those on different labels, that is why, is because the amount of information that you can fit in a QR code is so much more vast than what you can fit in a traditional barcode.
I think that this is like where I think we're really going to see CPG companies, retailers get so creative when it
Mm,
comes to the digital foot fingerprint, really, of what a consumer is doing inside a store. And I mean, even something like that, like let's say as you use those codes, they're going to be able to see what you're opening up, what you're scanning. Like that information is going to help them figure out exactly how to pinpoint and market to customers as well. So not only is it advantageous to consumers who want to know more information about the goods that they're consuming, and yes, help with recalls and all, but that's extraordinary data that's going to help bring more products. We talk about shelves being stocked. They're gonna be stocked with what we want, and also help better with like placement of where we're
mm,
putting items, like where we're putting different. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing grocery stores like aisle changes starting to like creep up, right? Like
mm,
putting I don't know, something like salsa closer to chips, right? Stuff like that, where it's like, okay, we know where consumers are looking at things and how they're maneuvering around stores. So how can we better work with our customers as well? Plus something like that, right? And I know to target ads on social media for these products too. So I think this stuff's really cool. A quick story. It's like I was at uh where must have been Kroger. Kroger's my favorite store out of everything up here. We have Meyer, which is like very
mm,
a niche if you're from Michigan. But I was checking out and forgot that I had put toilet paper like underneath my cart, right? So I was like forgot to scan it and I went to go press pay now, and the machine like wouldn't let me, and it was like a administrator or something's gonna come help you, and I was like, I don't know what it wants, and it's a camera, and they could see that I still had items in my
oh
cart.
wow.
So it prevented me from stealing it, I guess is the best way to put it. But but I also was like, oh yeah, that's right, like that's there. So like they're watching like every step, and people could be freaked out about that kind of stuff. But like right there, we talk about waste in this industry or lost profits. I mean, fraud just makes prices go up anyway. So I think it's just I'm very excited to see how stores change like over the next decade and how we're interacting. And I mean something like that, right? Like we could theoretically wouldn't need to even scan out. There's I think what is it like Whole Foods or something
Oh,
like that
yeah,
does that?
Amazon that
Yeah.
you just put items in your bag and you walk out, like, you don't
Yeah.
pay anybody,
It,
it
like,
just automatically
charges
chart
you
yeah.
yeah. That like, how great is that? I have to wait in this, like, stupid line and, like, go through everything, so, yeah, I think that stuff is really cool, and we cover a lot of this kinda stuff on the Stock Out, which is a new show that I'm on FreightWaves, so go check that out too because, um, yeah, I that's the, like, stuff I really find fascinating is, like,
Mhm.
how we like, on social media, like, how easy it is now to be like, "Wow, that's a cool dress on her," and, like, buy it in, like, 2 seconds, right? In, like, 2
I've
clicks.
And there's, like, this whole, like, to co I guess maybe the other side of that is, like, the trend on social media of, like, de-influencing and, like, telling people, like, what not to
Yeah,
buy is also really interesting because I've heard of other women who have just, like, quit social media altogether, and they found that their impulse purchases, their impulse buys have gone down dramatically because they're not seeing those targeted ads and they're not constantly being shown products and things that they desire and that they want, and so their purchasing habits go down just simply by deleting social media. So it's like all of this, like, in person versus digital real estate. I think I'm right there with you. It's really fascinating because I used to be a vendor for Walmart stores where it was a company called like God, I can't. I probably shouldn't even say the name, but they were like a CD company. It was my job to like make sure that like the CDs
yeah,
looked really good, and were organized in the music section. I was not a Walmart employee, but it
yeah,
was my job to go in and like make sure that there wasn't like dust or
yep,
on the products. Make sure that they're in their proper place and their ABC order, so that when people are coming and looking for that product, that they find it as quickly as possible. So removing those different like frustration points of the
mhm,
checkout process, of the purchasing process, are just like these micro improvements that are happening behind the scenes that you don't even realize that it takes. It's going to take 4 years to get the damn labels changed on all of our
yeah.
goods from a barcode to a QR code. So these things are always in motion. So I thought that that was interesting, and I'd be happy to send you those photos if you want to use it for a future
Yes.
stock out episode.
Yeah,
Um,
please do.
but let's move on to the next part of this show, and that is becoming like an increasingly favorite part of my show because I just find it endlessly fascinating. That's cargo crimes. So this is actually a separate part of the show now. I used to kind of bundle them, with the favorite like ideas and hustles, but then also like the crime portion of it. But I think cargo crimes it's growing so much. You sort of alluded to it earlier in the show with the Estes hack. And just to give people some background, I'm going to play a clip from What the Truck. And this comes from Curtis Garrett. He is, I think he has the course, and not just a course, but like a whole like learning infrastructure
Yes.
around understanding LTL. LTL is just so frankly complex. And so I'm going to play this clip now. Hopefully, everybody can hear it.
So just over a week and a half ago, the weekend before last, they discovered kind of some irregularities in their tech systems. Luckily, that was I believe it was midway through Saturday and not a business day for an LTL carrier. But that being said, they decided after watching it for a little bit of time to take all systems offline in all of last week, Monday through Friday, and then still kind of in the trenches this week with, a step at a time, diagnosing, fixing, solutioning, and getting things stood back up. So really unfortunate. In my, in my industry knowledge, it's probably the largest carrier to ever get hit, at least in the LTL space, with a hack of this magnitude. Um, it's sad to see, but it's at the same time, our industry, supply chain in general, LTL with all the yellow news, and with Estes being kind of a prime bidder on some of that property, we've all been getting a lot of press and mainstream attention in the past couple months. So it does make sense to me that maybe they hit somebody's radar that didn't previously know about them, or other companies in the space.
That's
So
Yeah.
that was a clip from Curtis Garrett about the current Esty situation that was going on, and essentially the way I think for a lot of these cybersecurity issues happens is that these hackers can get in either through I guess person. Through trying to find out like their password and hacking that, or phishing like what you were talking about earlier with clicking a link that is going to go for nefarious reasons. So there's lots of different ways that these people can get in, but the idea is that once they're in, they get a hold of your data and they hold it hostage, and they hold
Mhm.
your company hostage. And a lot of, I would say, like blue collar industries, so like construction, oil and gas, trucking, of course, all of these industries are starting to get hit now because these hackers are realizing that cybersecurity hasn't exactly been taken that seriously in these different blue collar industries as it should, as in with say like banking, or even like banking is probably a perfect example for this. But they hold all of that information hostage. You pay a large sum of money, so you're not just paying a large sum of money to get your data back and for them to sort of release it back to you, but you're also suffering that loss of a business for all of the days that your systems are down. And so, for what I understand, that this particular attack with Estes, Curtis went on to say that it was a middleware. So they attacked basically the middleware part of Estes, and so a lot of the customer sensitive data that wasn't breached, fortunately. But the whole company was put on hold. So their systems couldn't talk to each other, and it's not just Estes, the company, that is put on hold and has to pay a ransom, but all of these other small mom and pop businesses, small mom and pop trucking companies, they're on hold too. And so for that situation, I mean, you're talking like over a week, sometimes weeks at a time, that you're trying to recover from this, and that can be detrimental to the almost to the point where like you could lose your entire business simply from a cybersecurity attack. And so I guess, Grace, with how much you cover freight tech in this industry, what are your sort of initial thoughts on the situation and just sort of the greater cybersecurity threats as a whole that affect freight?
First of all, this problem is just going to become exponentially and truly exponentially over the next couple of years an issue. I want to go back to the trucks aspect. Our trucks are getting more digital. We can talk autonomous trucking is a whole nother thing, but just even trucks in general, right? Like a lot of our even passenger vehicles, like these OEMs, they know and they understand that their own revenue is going to be hit because these vehicles are going to last longer, and what they're looking at is more of these like aftermarket services, being able to update the truck from like where they're located. So that's a whole other access point, right? Like if the OEMs ever get hit, that's a big problem because they're getting more and more into the vehicle aftermarket as well. So I think just knowing that the assets of this industry are becoming more and more susceptible to these situations. And as we start to add more technology, I mean, every time you hear the word integration or API connection, like that is just a different avenue that people can access. And for maybe those watching us that run like a small to medium sized brokerage, there's some really easy ways to attack y'all. I mean, to be honest, if you aren't using what is it? Two
Two-factor
factor
authentication.
authentication, right? And here's the thing, it's annoying. Okay.
Mhm.
Like I'll put that out there. That's really annoying to like have to log into your email and then like be on your phone, put in a code and act like I get that. But like we're an industry that's trillions and trillions of dollars. Like they understand as you grow that you've got the cash flow to pay for this, and that you have the capability to handle or deal with a hacker situation. So that's like one right there. You should have factor authentication as much as you possibly can. How often are you requesting that your inside office is changing passwords? And what do you hold as a standard for passwords?
Hmm.
I had a conversation with one of our FreightWaves guys, one of the tech side, like the sonar side at the Cleveland event. And I told him, I was like, I love my password because it's like, well, first off, that right there is a problem, right? Like using the same one on everything, which I have changed, hackers. If you're listening now, things have changed. But when I had this conversation a couple months ago, it's like, I use CAPTCHA from when I like first made my Zanga in like, remember Zanga?
Wow. What a
Yeah,
throwback on
it was
that.
yeah, my Zanga like asked me to like make a password, so I just used the like weird words that were in letters and stuff that were in my CAPTCHA. And so I told them, I was like, it's a weird password. Like, there's no way they'd ever get that. And they're like, no, that's like not how it works. Like, especially if you're using it for multiple things, like they probably already know your dumb CAPTCHA, you idiot. So eh, I think people just think like, oh, if I make it like a scramble of things, like they'll never figure it out. And that's not true. And honestly, it has to deal with more of like how often you're changing your password and keeping it so that they really have to keep guessing. So that's a whole thing. Like, what are the standards that you have when you have a new rep come into your office and you say, go ahead and set up the system? Like, are you also giving them guidelines for what their password should be like?
Hmm.
Right. And it shouldn't be freight 123. And also sharing passwords, right? Like there's a lot of systems in the old business I was in where it was all of it was under my email and the same type of password. And of course, it was a password that people could easily remember. And like, okay, well, that's not safe either. So changing that kind of systems. For trucks out there, your telematic devices. We have this is a whole nother episode. We should probably get Clarissa Hawes on for this discussion. We have the worst out of anyone authentication process for ELDs. Like it's a third party company can verify that your ELD is meets standards and is secure.
Hmm.
Whereas like Canada, they actually have like an actual system, like an actual set process of what you so a lot of the ELDs we have today are hackable. They're hackable from overseas. They happen all the time. People actually they like it that way because they can change their hours and mess with it.
Hmm.
So it's something that should be fixed just in general when it comes to hours of service. But they're hackable. And so to your telematic devices, if you're a carrier, like get with your team and get with your internal team and make sure that stuff is solid because that's the easy way to get into your truck. Also, yeah, strong passwords. This is actually I'm taking this off of the NMFTA, which Curtis does work with as well. Another one in particular is there's a lot of companies that don't use cloud services. So your data is usually inside your local storage device. Back that up every single day. Part of if you get hacked, right? Like that's
The backups
data.
is another big one that a
Yeah.
lot of folks don't pay, and that's how quickly you can just sort of almost like get rid of the files that the hackers have access to,
Yep.
and you can replenish or you can restore from your own data backup point. Is another big one.
Another really small one, and this is the last one I'll touch on here that I think is very simple that people are lazy about. I'm bad at it too. I'm checking right now. I don't have one. When your computer says update it, update it.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times it's the malware that it's trying to update. So when you say, tomorrow for 30 days, you've got yourself exposed for an
Hmm.
extra 30 days too. So again, think about for if you're listening today and you're in operations for your company, start putting together plans like how are you actually building the security of your business, because yes, if that takes the brokers, I'm sure you all know down to the penny what you make an hour, right? So if you're down for 10 minutes, how bad is that to your business? Same thing here. If you're down for days, how bad is that for your business?
Weeks.
Your customers are going to fly away from you so fast.
And
So
your trucks, like, they're stranded, you can't do
yeah,
nothing, like, it's so much money that
yes,
is lost in these things. I talked to a cybersecurity expert, I had him on the show about a year ago, and he said that what his company does is they specialize in coming into a company and doing just, basic training, of course, but then they also test the staff. And if they test the staff, they'll send like emails, they'll call them on the phone. And if that person fails that test, that simulation, then that person has to go into additional training in
Love
order
that.
to recognize, what kind of thing. So it's not just, from a sense of like keeping backups of all of your different integrations and tech systems, but it's also the prevention, because the biggest entryway to get into these systems is you. And
Yes.
that's where I don't know if a lot of people have heard of the MGM hack that just happened, just a few weeks ago. It
Yes.
cost the company $100 million, and they were down for weeks at a time. And if you're thinking like MGM resorts, like in Vegas, like, oh, what kind of resorts are there? Well, we're talking the Bellagio,
Mhm.
Aria, the Cosmopolitan, Luxor, Mandalay Bay, Excalibur. Like these, that's just some of the MGM resorts that were all affected. People couldn't, the key cards
Yep.
didn't work, so you couldn't get into your room. If you wanted to get into your room, think of how large those hotel rooms or those resorts are. There's thousands and thousands of rooms there. If you wanted to get into your room, you had to have somebody from the casino escort you up to your room and open the door for you. Like that is how massive these things are. And it cost them $100 million in addition to all of the money that they potentially lost from people not being able to, gamble or play slots. Like their security cameras were down. Like it's just so massive. And I have a few stats here from the Thedius newsletter. A big fan of theirs. I've shouted them out on the podcast before. But they said that cyber attacks have cost organizations more than the US $540,000 over the last 3 years. That's just organizations within the US, $500,000. The frequency of ransom payments is up by 357%, and 33% spend less than $100,000 per year on cybersecurity management. So if you think about it from like the lens of like MGM, which I'm sure that they have, a bunch of different security measures. I mean, it's a casino for God's sakes. But the way that these hackers got in is they found the person's LinkedIn profile. They found out their name and job title, like head of IT security. They called the MGM customer support line, pretended to be that person just based on their information from LinkedIn. And that's how they were able to get in. They got in through customer support,
Love that.
impersonating the person from LinkedIn, cost them $100 million. That is just unfathomable. And not to mention like all of the negative sort of customer experience that all of these people experienced on all of their different properties over the course of weeks. That is insane to me. So if you're not paying attention to cybersecurity, then I implore you, go listen. I'll link to it in the show notes of that episode with that cybersecurity expert. But this is just a topic I think that we have to cover more in this industry, and we're not speaking up enough about it. And I think for a lot of these companies, they try to keep it quiet because they don't want a lot. And I mean, naturally
Yeah.
so, they don't want a lot of people to know about it. But there are a lot of lessons that can be learned from these situations that can just create sort of a greater awareness on what you can do to try to prevent these things from happening to you and your company. Because like I said earlier, it could be detrimental. It could put you out of business. Like that's how massive these problems are. And they know you're going to pay the ransom because there's no other alternative.
Yeah. It's something I think that a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, could this happen to me?" Well, when it does, you'll regret, I think, not planning that, right? Check out the I just say this so slow because I always mess it up. The nmfta.org's website. They literally have full-on playbooks and handbooks for how to set this stuff up, so you don't have to spend a ton of time doing it. But again, I think it's something that the amount of time you put into it will be worth it if something ever someone tries to get into the system.
Yeah, well said. Let's move on to the final segment of the
Yeah.
show. Oh crap. Yeah, we only have a few minutes left. So
We're good.
uh
No, we're good. Yeah.
okay, we're good. Whew.
Yeah.
All right. The final segment, our source to porch, favorite logistics of story. Do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Oh, you can go first. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is with this podcast, I've kind of like turned I, sorry, I'm trying to do three things at once while being sick. So I've toyed around with the idea of having a merch store for the podcast. I think, a lot of podcasters out there have thought about this, even from like a company level, like having a merch store. I've ordered some like one-off things that say, everything is logistics on it just for myself. And I've had, surprisingly, I've had other people be like, where can I get that? Can I, support you in any way? And I'm so thankful for it. But then I started running into issues where it's like, I need different sizes, or hey, can
Right.
I return this item? And it's like, shit, I don't have time to manage this.
No.
I just want to be able to offer people the goods, but I don't want to have to deal with like everything that's involved with e-commerce. So I learned very quickly, like, this is something that is not just a fly by night thing. We have to sort of think this through a little bit more. But I was really interested in a new concept that comes from Drake, of all people. It's called DrakeRelated.com. It's essentially an e-commerce shop that he partners with Shopify and then Shopify sellers. So he doesn't have to physically, or, his team doesn't, because he's not doing this. He's not shipping t-shirt boxes to people across the country. But his team doesn't have to manage the shipping aspect of it, the returns aspect of it, of having an e-commerce store. And I think that this is going to be a really cool use case for the future. So I'm going to share my screen and let's play this clip.
Drake's merch store is doing something I've never seen before. This blew me away. I think this is the future of e-commerce. What you're seeing is called DrakeRelated.com. It's kind of like a hub for all things Drake, but it's cool because it's built as a map of his compound. He calls it the embassy. You can see the G-Wagon in the front, the lounge, the pool, the plane, all these different rooms. But if you look closer, you can see a bunch of these items have these white little dots. If you click them, they actually link back to products in his Shopify store. Now, some of these
cool.
originals, like clothing or posters that his team manufactures in Toronto. But they took it one step further. In 2023, Drake wanted to support smaller brands and design custom products. But he didn't want to deal with the logistical hassle and managing the back and forth of the inventory. That's where this new feature comes in, Shopify Collective. Collective let Drake's team search through hundreds of other brands on Shopify to find ones he thought were cool and could collab with. Take this Hotline Bling pool floaty from Funboy, a small company in California. Drake calls them up, they design the piece together, but then the magic happens. Drake puts the floaty on his site and generates demand. But then when they sell, Funboy gets a notification and sends it directly to the customer. Drake's team never has to touch a thing.
Isn't that crazy?
So smart.
I thought that was so when I saw it, I was like, that's what I need. I need the Drake solution to be able to handle like e-commerce solutions for, maybe your company or a media brand. I thought that it was awesome. So kudos to Drake for, I guess pioneering, just a different way to partner with different smaller shops, which I love. So it's not just, him worrying about the margins on like the sweatshirts and things that he's selling, but it's also he's thinking about the logistical challenges of managing all of these different products in a store, trying to give fans what they want, but at the same time, showing a little bit of love to, some of these smaller creators that have, sort of a, not an affinity, but just sort of I guess it's very like parallel to his brand. And so being able to partner with them, I thought was just such a really cool concept.
It's like it's almost like licensing yourself in a way, but still being able to have that merch aspect that I think so many artists make so much money off of to begin with, right? So it's very interesting. Plus, I just love that like looking around and like clicking on these certain items. It's so cool.
Yeah. So if you wanted to check out the site, it's called DrakeRelated.com. You can actually just click through. It's a tab in like the bottom left-hand corner that says explore, and you can explore different parts of like the embassy and like all of the items that are on sale. So I thought that was just such a unique experience, especially from an e-commerce perspective and from an influencer perspective, that he's able to just really create another line of revenue, not just for himself, but also promote these other smaller shops that could, just be an additional revenue stream for them as well. Probably their largest revenue stream.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Probably their biggest. Interesting.
All right, so that was mine. With yours, I know that I got to pull up a video for this one. So I'm gonna, while I'm doing that, kind of set it up for us.
Yes. So we do have a video to showcase this, but I'm gonna a little bit of background. So we're talking about take us back to 2005 and the Atlanta was looking to, well, actually no, not Atlanta itself. Home Depot's founder at the time, Bernard Marcus, he was living in Atlanta, but he missed the ocean, as any very expensive rich person does, right? Now, but he's nowhere near. He's over 270 miles away from the ocean. So he says, I want to bring the ocean to me. So he gets with, I believe the zoo or some Atlanta is a city, and says, let's build the Georgia Aquarium. So he goes ahead and he does that. And now at the time, Home Depot's like, UPS is like, oh, anything that we can do to help with, we'd love to be a part of, right? Since they're same hometown situation. So he starts building this aquarium and he realizes that he wants whale sharks to be a part of the aquarium, which is great. But guess what? They're nowhere to be found in the middle of Atlanta or anywhere near our oceans in particular. So here's the funny part. When UPS was like, hey, we'll help out with this, they said, we'll help out with anything you want free of charge. So Marcus says, let's swipe that card, baby. And he says, we need to figure out how to get these whales from Thailand back to this aquarium. And so this is going to be, mind you, UPS had to do all this for free. That's what I think is hilarious about this. And this is the first time that anyone's ever moved whales across the globe, really. So this video is going to showcase to you exactly how they did that. And the first time ever that someone had pulled this off.
Yeah, this clip is about a few minutes long, so bear with us, but it's worth it. And I'll link to it in the show notes in case you want to watch it, but listening to it is still going to be a good experience too. So here we go.
Held in an ocean pen on the coast near a small regional airport in the south of Taiwan. And when the UPS logistics team showed up to survey it, they realized that the runway nearby just wasn't gonna work. It was too weak to support the weight of a 747 loaded with a couple of big fish. So here's what they did instead. They began by using some cranes with a sling to capture the 2 whale sharks out of their pen and place them in 2 individual custom-made shipping containers. The containers were 24 feet long by 8 feet wide and filled with the 2,000-pound whale shark plus water and life support systems, which made the total weight of each container approximately 25,000 pounds. The 2 tanks were then loaded onto a turboprop Lockheed C-130 and flown up to the international airport at Taipei for the transfer aboard the bigger 747. As the C-130 pulled up to the gate adjacent to the 747 was already fueled up and ready for takeoff, but they had to figure out where to place the big tanks inside of it. After multiple calculations, the UPS logistics team decided upon a method of bringing 1 tank into the plane's nose, the second tank into the back, and then simultaneously slowly move the 2 tanks together towards the plane's natural point of balance over the main landing gear before bolting them both down to the floor. The crew were instructed to take off and land slow and shallow so as not to stress out their special passengers too greatly. But by this point, time was the biggest enemy of the operation. They couldn't afford any delays with the whale sharks because they were constantly pooping and pissing inside of their small tanks and fouling up their limited water. It's not like you can replace 20,000 plus pounds of water when you're flying in a jet up in the air. Even a short delay could have resulted in one of their deaths. And the journey from Taipei to Atlanta was over 17 hours long. So UPS brought aboard an entire team of skilled veterinarians, carpenters, and marine biologists to ensure that the trip went smoothly. The 747 took off from Taipei and had to land in Anchorage first for a fish and wildlife inspection because, you can't just fly a whale from one side of the world to the other without the proper
Janet's on the case.
They had a crew change and continued on from there to Atlanta safely, where the whale shark containers were unloaded, placed onto flatbed trucks, and driven from the airport to their new home in the aquarium, all alive and in one piece. UPS achieved something that nobody had ever done before. The madmen actually shipped live gigantic whales in a plane from one side of the world to the other and all overnight, and it only took 6 weeks of planning and came with a shipping cost of $1.4 million. Not all that bad of a price at all when you consider the UPS did all of it for the aquarium for free. Of course, if you want to figure out a way to ship your own gigantic marine animal to your house, you'll not only need a pretty big tank that's probably going to have to be bigger than your entire house is, but you'll also need a solid understanding of multiple mathematical concepts for your logistics
I think that you could
calculations.
stop it
And
there.
there's no better place to
Oh yeah,
Wait,
here comes the ad.
isn't that crazy though? Like for the best part is like for free. Like this. Hey, if anyone takes anything from the story, never say we'll do anything you want for free. I will say sad update. About 3 years ago, one of those whale sharks did pass away. Her name was
Oh,
Trixie. But the other one I think is still there today. So, and I also did just think it's interesting, right? The like the Home Depot guy just was like, I want an aquarium closer to me. So, yeah, it's I thought it's just very interesting, right? That all of that work to go into moving them and overnight, right? Like think about how often you like are like, yeah, I want it to my doorstep tomorrow. Like imagine. Yeah, I'd like two
6
whales
weeks
here tomorrow. Thank you
6
so
weeks
much.
is crazy,
Yeah.
a turnaround time to make that happen. That's frankly shocking that they were able to do that in 6 weeks and that they survived.
I just imagine the UPS like CEO at the time just being like, "Give me an update on the shark situation. What's the price tag? What's it at?" And they're like, "Well, clear here just got over 1 million. That sounds awesome. Tell Home Depot their prices just went up." Like,
The amount of budgeting
yeah,
changes that and
yeah.
budgeting approval that had to happen, but you can't back out of it. Like once you're in there, like you gotta because what
Hey boss, remember when we told Home Depot we'd give them anything they want, and we assumed it was like supplies for the aquarium? Well, they really
I
cashed in on this one.
Yeah, that's a super interesting one. I think Dooner did a story the other day on shipping manatees too, and
Yes.
that's what I love about this segment is that there's so many stories that we can tell inside of our companies when it comes to freight. Because freight is the movement of goods. It sort of it goes back to what we talked about earlier in this show, how connected we are from a global economy perspective, and how all of these things just get somewhere and you don't really realize how they get there until they're there. And so being able to
Exactly.
recognize these types of stories like shipping a whale, shipping a manatee is
Yeah.
just endlessly fascinating to me. So I encourage and I implore everyone, to look for these types of stories, within your own company. And while, I still have you, I have one more video that I
Yes.
wanted to play because
Uh-oh.
it was just so interesting. It is spooky season. It's
Yes.
October. I want to this creator that's on TikTok. I know you're not on TikTok, but she's one of my favorites. But she is so great at telling stories, and Geodosaurus is her name. But she has a spooky lake month, and she lives up in Michigan, so I know you're already going to be a fan of
Ooh.
her. But she has a series that she posts a video a day of like a different spooky lake month story, and this one talks about the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. And Namibia is a country in Africa. It has these just amazing coastlines where it's like these sand dunes that are so massively tall, and then it just drops off, and then it's the ocean. And so
Yes.
what happens is a lot of these ships get caught in the fog next to the coast, and they crash into this area. It's called Skeleton Coast for a reason. So
Oh.
let me switch since it is spooky season. I wanted to, be able to give a shout out to this creator because this video is about, 2.5 minutes long, but the visuals are incredible. So I'll link to it, drink every time I say link to it in the show notes. But it is in the show notes in case you want to watch it. So let's hit play.
Yes, hello. It's Spooky Lake Month where we're doing 31 days of haunted hydrology.
Yes.
Today, I want to talk about the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. This haunting coastline is part of the Namib Desert, which extends from Angola through Namibia to South Africa. It's estimated to be one of the oldest deserts in the world, between 55 and 80 million years old. The Skeleton Coast specifically is located on the northern part of this enormous desert. This morbid name came from when the shoreline was covered in whale and seal bones, remnants from the whaling industry. However, today it's also known for its infamous ship graveyard. Over the centuries, thousands of ships have ended up stranded here. There's a
Thousands.
specific reason it's notoriously deadly, having to do with the geography of this region. Hot, dry air from the interior of the continent combines with the cold, wet air from Antarctica via the Benguela Current. The hot, dry air acts as a cap, preventing the cold, wet air from forming rain clouds. Instead, this desert has a seemingly endless supply of fog. For 180 days out of the year, there's a dense fog that
Wow.
covers the Skeleton Coast. This is why so many ships end up running aground here, the oldest of which is from the 1500s. After getting lost in dense fog, the intense surf would have prevented any
Good
of these
soup.
ships from returning to the sea. The sailors that were inevitably stranded on the Skeleton Coast would only have one option: making their way into the surrounding desert, virtually a death sentence. Parched and starving, surrounded by
Look at
salt
that.
and sand, sailors would have to make their way over dunes that were almost 1,000 feet high. Even if they made it over the crest of the first dune, they'd be faced with over 63,000 miles of desert. Rescues were unlikely in this hospitable environment, so the dunes are probably full of bones. Today, the Skeleton Coast National Park is guarded by this haunting gate, which is topped by 2 towering whale bones. So I wouldn't want to be a castaway on the Skeleton Coast. 7 out of 10 spookies.
Just spooky season.
Spook. No, that's really creepy. I love a good old broken down ship, but I'll tell you what.
The stories it could tell.
Yeah,
But
well,
that
just like we get a lot of them here, like so you can like there's one up near Traverse City, closer to like Sleeping Bear Dunes where you can like swim up to it and like yeah, it's really cool.
a
So
and aren't it correct me if I'm wrong, but the ships that, maybe capsize or sink in, like, the Great Lakes, like, Michigan area, aren't they, like, really well preserved
yeah,
too because they're in fresh water and not, salt
and
water?
so cold. Like
Mm.
there's the Lake Superior, they say like well there's actually a 2, the Edmund Fitzgerald, you actually can't go and technically dive near it anymore because it's protected by Canada as a underground cemetery
Oh,
or
wow.
underwater cemetery because it's so cold the bodies don't
Oh, wow.
degrade. They're
That's
still
super creepy.
preserved. There's actually an Emerald Isle. It's an island way up, and we're talking Lake Superior, warmest throughout the year, gets to 50 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Like right now, it's probably 40 degrees. It's always cold. Emerald Isle, there's a small ship that sank that like there is a body that, and you can still dive. Like it's fully preserved. Like it's just in there. Like
Wow.
so, yeah, it's so cold that like even the dead bodies like don't even rot. They're just like frozen. Die.
Insane.
Yeah,
Well, I figured that that would be, obviously it is October, so I wanted to play that one, just as sort of like an end cap
love
to the
it.
show because it's just so shipping is so cool. Like it's
So
just so
cool.
there's so many stories to be told in this industry, and it's just I you should see my library of things that I store because I want to talk about it someday, but I know I'll probably never get to it. So I thoroughly appreciate this show to be able to allow the two of us to be able to explore these different types of just interesting, fascinating, sometimes heartbreaking stories that encompasses shipping and supply chain. I feel really blessed to be able to cover this industry and be able to talk about these things that really impacts and tells the story of human civilization. So that about does it for this episode of Freight Friends. Grace, you got anything you're working on? Things you want to give a shout out to?
I have some cool stuff that I'm working on that we will definitely talk about the next episode, which will probably be at F3. So we'll
Yeah.
touch on that here in a second. But if anyone's going to TIA Technovations, reach out to me now. As I said earlier in the episode, if you're releasing anything at F3, tell me about it now. Let's get working on it so we can get you some nice coverage while you're at the event. And busy until F3. Listen, go to F3, get your tickets now, live.freightwaves.com. If you've been to the event before, it's a blast. This year, it's just gonna be out of this world. Like I think it wasn't until like the last couple weeks where I'm starting to see everything come together for it that I'm like, oh my God, people are like, you're not ready. You're not ready for this. So
Super
get,
FOMO if you miss it.
yes, and go get their tickets. I don't want to hear complaints about pricing. You guys pay for the craziest things in your office. We all know it. So just like don't get the golf simulator and send like 7 people to F3. That they'll appreciate it more. Trust me. I mean,
And you probably
TI's
get more business.
TI's headlining. Come on, like what's a private TA concert? That's it's priceless. Once in a lifetime, right there. So. Yeah, TIP tip, depending on when you became a fan. Come on, Rubber Band Man, come on. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah. Again, link to that in the show notes. I just booked up all of my travel for that event. Can't wait. Ti has been on my list of folks to see for a long time. His music has got me through some dark periods of my life. It's sort of like a motivational, Rubber Band Man, all that good stuff. And there's like one line, I'm blanking on the song, but he says from Miami up to Duval.
Yes.
And Duval County, that's where I, born and raised. So if he says that, if he raps that song at F3, I'll lose my mind.
If Lil Duval shows up, that would be crazy too.
Is he rumored to show up?
I don't know. They're just like best friends. You never know.
Oh, hey, we'll see. We'll see.
That would be
All right.
wild.
Well, that about does it for this week's show. To catch more episodes of Everything is Logistics, just hit up everythingislogistics.com. Make it super easy for you. Got all the links right there for you, to socials, to podcasts, to email, all that good stuff. Thank you guys again for tuning into another fabulous episode. And thank you, Grace, for your time and perspective on this edition of Freight Friends. We will see you all real soon, and we'll definitely see you in person at F3. Come say hi, come say hello, and we'll see you soon.